Good morning, friends. I'm the GM Philosopher, and this is the GM Philosophy channel. Today, we're talking about how to get inspired when maybe you don't particularly feel inspired about running your next TTRPG session. The purpose of this channel is to empower game masters to run better games. So, if that sounds like the mission for you, then you're in the right place. And I'm just going to talk through this very casually. And I want to talk about an experience I had the other night where I was prepping for a game. Now, when I sat down to begin prepping for the next session, I will admit I wasn't super pumped. Not that I wasn't pumped to play. I just wasn't pumped about like the next leg of the journey. I thought to myself, I don't really know if I'm super into kind of just the default of what's going to happen. It felt to me like there was kind of a probably a way things were gonna fold out if we were gonna just run it common sense, right? If you kind of extrapolate the direction and then you project ahead using that default extrapolation. I will admit that the direction it was going in wasn't super exciting to me. Now, this is not a diss on my players or even on me. It's just sometimes how it feels. Sometimes it doesn't feel super exciting. Sometimes we're not super inspired. So you have to switch it up. And I've done this a lot in my TTRPG gaming over the past more than 2 decades of running games. I've come to realize that there are many times when you have to switch things up and you have to introduce variables that are not going to railroad the story in a certain direction. No, that's not what I'm saying. But you have to introduce variables that are going to make you excited to run the session, that are going to make you inspired, that are going to get you pumped, being like, oh, I can't wait to like show this to the characters, or I can't wait for this situation to happen to see how it's going to play out. And I also want to keep these things really, really simple. So here's what I did to make the session feel inspired. Here's what I did to get excited about the prep, to get excited about running it instead of that blah, man, I don't know, I'm not really feeling this one. This is what I did to transform it. So the first thing I did was I basically decided one important thing I wanted to kind of have happen to each player character. And I didn't even specify which player characters it was. Sometimes I will. Like sometimes it'll be something really unique to that player character, but in this case, it was actually more of an investigative session, or that's what it was going to be. And so I basically arranged a bunch of clues, and through the course of the session, I was going to basically let each player character discover one of these really important clues. So I put together these clues that I thought were super cool, kind of like religious artifact type clues. Then I basically decided on a couple different possible avenues for combat. I thought up this basically unknown enemy who it turns out has been kind of following the group, and I was going to introduce this enemy, or at least give them the potential to discover this enemy, and then there was going to possibly be a combat. And then there was also the possibility for another more sort of like, let's say, mundane but kind of like emotional combat where members of the NPC group were going to like disagree. The party members at this point are kind of a part of like a large resistance movement. And so there's like, it's almost like a military resistance rebellion type situation, and they're in with these people. So, there were going to be two factions who were going to fight about something. And then I was basically brainstorming these two options, and then see, you never really know what's going to happen. You can't force these things. So, I create a couple options and I just let the session unfold. And then eventually it'll come to a place where it'll be like, oh, this is the perfect place to bring this out. That's how I always treat these things. Now, another thing that I did was that I prepared a new, basically, contact for them, who they were gonna basically be told to seek out. And they were given some clues about this contact, and then they had to seek out this contact. And I made this contact really interesting. I really fleshed out the personality. I fleshed out some great artwork, and I did a lot of things to basically make this contact super interesting. So it wasn't just, Bob from around the corner. No offense to the Bobs out there, but it was a really in-depth contact with unique mannerisms, who had an interesting vibe, who had an interesting story, who had an interesting outlook, who was going to kind of challenge the player characters in some ways, especially in some like moral and ethical kind of ways. So I put that out there in my prep. I basically prepared it. If you hear a lot of clattering, it's my dog in the background. He is going to town on a beef femur. So he's a big boy. He likes his beef femurs, and when he chews it is very noisy. So if you hear that, that's what that is. I don't have like a dragon caged in the background. Or do I have a dragon caged in the background? Anyway, so I did all of this session prep. And by the time I was done, and this actually probably took me maybe 2 hours to flesh all this out. I did some thinking. I had to really work on the clues. This NPC kind of came to me really fast, like this contact they're supposed to make contact with. This came to me really fast. It took me a little bit of thinking through that maybe the hidden enemy, like that was gonna maybe pop in. I had to think through that, and then I started actually thinking about the larger arc of the campaign and how these things might fit into it, and that was really fun. And that actually got me pumped and inspired to think, wow, okay, I have these plans for later. Here's how some of this stuff could fit into that. Here's how this stuff could line up and match. Like this could be the part of an emerging storyline. If I tweak this clue just a little bit, if I tweak this contact just a little bit, you know what? In 6 sessions, they're going to look back and be like, oh, wow, that all fit together. And that's really cool. And so I did that kind of thinking, sometimes you don't have to do that. Sometimes there can be one-off situations, but there were a couple things here that I wanted to fit and make fit later. And that excites me. Like that gets me pumped. So at the end of the day, putting in some effort to make the session fun for you is important. And that's going to make the difference in making you feel inspired by it. If you're sitting down to run a session that you are just not excited about, then, well, first of all, if you're not excited, there's kind of a problem, right? We do want to show up and do a good job. Sometimes it is true that we're not going to be 100% pumped all the same all the time. Sometimes maybe we've had a crappy day and we're kind of in a bad mood, but we show up to gaming and that's what turns it around. But we don't run into it just excited and lit. But we do want to be excited. We want to look forward to it. And when we have that excitement, this rubs off on the players. This gives the players permission to say, I want to get excited about this too. The game masters are excited. Now I am also excited and I don't feel like the only one, right? I think that this is actually really important. So key takeaways are this. If you're not feeling pumped about the upcoming session, try to diagnose why. Number one, maybe do some prep work to make it fun for you. Like prep some things that are interesting to you. Take it in a wild direction. And when I say take it in a wild direction, I don't mean like just teleport all the players up and put them in a different world, though I have done that too before. That feels a little railroady to me. I like to give players a choice. But basically throw some variables in there, throw some things in there that are going to really throw the players for a loop, throw some stuff in there that's going to cause some emotional reactions, throw some stuff in there that you've never done before, throw a cool character, a cool villain in there, make a cool clue, do something creepy, right? I think that this is really the essence of it. As a game master, I like to think of running a game sort of like preparing to shoot the episode of a show. I love the idea of making shows. I think making shows would be so much fun. In fact, I often feel like TTRPGs fall somewhere in the art spectrum between writing a collaborative novel with other people and then doing improv together, somewhere in the middle. But if you take those things out to their extremes, we kind of come to making shows and making movies, right? Start putting music with them and you start writing a script and you start acting and you tell a story that way. And I think that is basically a trajectory on that trajectory toward making shows where TTRPGs, they fit into that art form. They're somewhere on that arc. So I like to think, well, what's this next, episode going to be about? What are going to be the big twists? What are going to be the big conflicts? I think it was Stephen King who said, put conflict on every page. And that's what we want to do when we're preparing for our TTRPGs. We want to put conflict in every session and hopefully for every player character. And if we can personalize it, even better. Sometimes this will naturally emerge, and that's the best thing to do. But like what I do is I prep just tiny little things so that I have that, and then I put it out there. But then the conflict itself, we're improvising, and we are basically doing everything we can to give the players agency and make a sandbox environment, but to put interesting things in the sandbox. So doing a little bit of work to throw things in there that are going to make it fun for you. A character you're going to have fun playing, a villain you're going to have fun monologuing for, a combat you're going to have fun running, a magic item you think is going to be fun to see be used. These are all really great ways to boost excitement for yourself as the game master if you're coming up on a session that might feel a little bit blah. So there you have it. That's going to be my thoughts on that. Watch some more of my awesome videos, and I'll see you awesome people on the next one.